Did the Oklahoma Sooners loss to Kansas hurt their playoff chances much? We'll talk about that and so much more on today's episode of Locked On Sooners Live. There's a video. There it is.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners Live Monday night. Thank you for staying up late with us. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at Gametime. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Elmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. The show is at Locked On Sooners. And thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Josh, one thing I want to look at real quickly is just Oklahoma's playoff chances, because the ESPN Football Power Index still likes Oklahoma a little bit better than Texas to still make the playoff. But in a real world situation where we're not relying on computer simulations, what do you think Oklahoma has to do? And do they really have a shot at getting into the playoff, even if they run the table?
Oh, of course they do. Yeah, if they run the table, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance. I mean, under that scenario, you're probably meeting, you would think, Texas, K-State, one of the two, right? Probably the winner of that game coming up this week. So, yeah, that would be another big-time win for you. 2 wins over Texas and all the other dominoes falling wherever they may. Probably you would wind up as the number 4 seed, I would think, in the college football playoff. But, look, getting from right here to right there, A to B, there's a lot to clean up for Oklahoma. Number one, hopefully they're going to get healthy. That clearly was a big-time problem defensively for Oklahoma. And maybe a little bit of the decision-making, play calling was in part the residual effect of losing Andrell Anthony. I don't know. But this team needs to get healthy, particularly defensively. And then they got to start playing better football again, John. Obviously – the decision-making from the coaching staff needs to improve, but defensively, they've got to be better there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to they were just so concerned with the elements on Saturday that it kind of hamstrung them a little bit, that they were so afraid to get the ball into Dylan Gabriel's hands, to let him throw the football as opposed to just running a running offense for 4 quarters. So, for me, it's going to be interesting to see, and I guess there's a lot of ifs that have to play out, a lot of hypotheticals. But I mean, if a Pac-12, like say a Washington, survives the Pac-12 season undefeated, they're in. If Georgia survives, what if Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC title game? That's 2 teams getting into the playoff. What if Ohio State or Michigan run the table, but their only loss is to either Ohio State or Michigan? It's going to be hard to keep both of those teams out, in my opinion. And so I do see a scenario where Oklahoma could run the table, finish as Big 12 champ, beat Texas again, or beat a surging Kansas State and have a really, really good win on their schedule and still not make the college football playoff just because of everything else that has to go right for them around the country. That's why I feel like this Kansas loss was such a disappointment, because it was right there for you to win. And that might be the game that keeps you out of the playoff. Now, that's assuming, again, they go and they run the table and win the Big 12 title.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, there's obviously plenty of teams out there that currently are roadblocks for Oklahoma. And first things first is you gotta win out, which looks like a legitimate ask for Oklahoma. I mean, there's at least 2 big-time tests on it, right? This game this weekend in Bedlam and Stillwater, and then either probably under this scenario, again, K-State or Texas in the Big 12 championship game, which asking Oklahoma to win both of those games right now, based on the way not just the Kansas game played out, but UCF before it, feels like that's asking a lot. The good news for Oklahoma in regards to a lot of this is, for OU, as fans, we're going to have a pretty good indication as soon as this week's done, right? I mean, you lose in Stillwater, it's over. There's no playoffs. and you lose in Stillwater, probably the Big 12 championship hopes, those are gone. So we're going to find out a lot about this team right here, right now this week. But John, if you get through Bedlam this week, if you win Bedlam this week, then all of a sudden you start thinking about the schedule going forward. And look, West Virginia, better than we thought, right? BYU and Provo, probably as advertised, maybe a little bit more challenging than advertised in terms of the difficulty of that road game. TCU, okay, probably not as challenging, definitely not as challenging as we thought in the offseason. But long story short is to say, I think Oklahoma State is the most difficult test left. So if you get through Bedlam this week, then all of a sudden, I'm not going to sit here and say that the Oklahoma Sooners playoff chances, okay, here we go, we're back on, you control your own destiny. No, that wouldn't be the case, but your final big obstacle, you probably would have, outside of the Big 12 championship game, you would have cleared it in the regular season.
I think that's a fair place to be. You know, West Virginia is a good team. They just keep on winning games. Made UCF turn the ball over 4 times. John Rice Plumlee threw 3 interceptions. So that's going to be a tough game, even though it's in Norman. And then TCU, man, I have no idea what to expect from the Horned Frogs because, one, their quarterback situation is really struggling with injuries. And I just don't know how good they are because they've been so up and down all season long. The trip to Provo is going to be an interesting one. How much do the elements play a factor in any of these games going forward? Because I'm at a point where I don't trust this team in the elements, especially offensively, because they've shown in 2 years, West Virginia last year and then against Kansas this year, that they don't have an offense capable of surviving the elements. So it'll be fascinating to see. But I mean, I think there's a way to the playoff. It's just right now it feels like a longer shot than what the ESPN Football Power Index is giving them. You know, I referenced it earlier. This is a computer model that runs thousands of simulations to determine these probabilities. And Oklahoma sits with a 28.9% chance to make the playoff. That sits behind, obviously, Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida State. That's it. So, I mean, they've got a good probability to make the playoff. Whether they do or not, that's going to be an interesting part of this whole thing. But again, it doesn't matter if you don't go and beat Oklahoma State in Bedlam. We'll give you some of our early thoughts on that here coming up here in a little bit. We'll also talk about the return of Gentry Williams and how important that's going to be for the Oklahoma Sooners in this game because, man, they really, really missed him. Kenai Walker has had some good moments this season, but they definitely missed having Gentry Williams out there. We'll do more of this. We'll take your questions, your comments as well on tonight's live show. We'll do more after the break. And if you're looking for some last-minute tickets, whether it's to Bedlam, Oklahoma City Thunder, if you're in the Dallas metro area, you're going to Dallas Stars, Mavericks, you're trying to get some World Series tickets sometime down the road, hey, go check out the Gametime app. It's the best place to get last-minute deals and the best seats right at your fingertips. Download the app on Apple Play Store or the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store, wherever you get your apps. Download the Gametime app. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, great features that allow you to see where you're going to sit and, again, pick the best seats. They've got the best last-minute prices for concerts, comedy shows, the theater, whatever you're looking for over at the Gametime app. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So Brent Venables revealed in the Rudy's Coaches show that Gentry Williams was back at practice, and he said he's hopeful for Danny Stutzman. Let's talk Gentry Williams first and how important it is that they're going to be getting him back, and then we can talk about how important it is to have Danny Stutzman available for Bedlam.
Well, it's obviously of paramount importance to get Gentry Williams back, even though really this week you could probably make an argument that it's more important for Danny Stutzman just because of what Ollie Gordon is doing for Oklahoma State. That's kind of the the big piece for Oklahoma State offensively. So I can understand that argument. But for OU, hey, it'd be huge to get Gentry Williams back. They're clearly not as good of a defense without him. Really, all three of the names we're probably about to talk about right now, Stutzman, Williams, and Peyton Bowen, who people are asking about. One thing was clear coming out of this game. A couple of things were clear, but one of the things that was clear about Oklahoma defensively is no-brainer, no-dust statement, but Oklahoma, they're not the competitive depth that we hear and have talked about. When they lose probably their three best defenders right now in Danny Stutzman, in Gentry Williams, and Peyton Bowen, this defense isn't nearly as good. And oh, by the way, who was it? Though I'll give him not a get-out-of-jail-free card here, but a, hey, I'm not putting all of the blame on you, Kenai Walker. It was Kenai Walker that got beat on the fourth down play, right? Even though, again, the get-out-of-jail-free card here is, my goodness, defensive line, can you get any pressure in a game-winning situation? Can you get any pressure at all? No, you can't. And Kenai Walker is the guy that winds up being the guilty party chasing there. So, obviously, Oklahoma needs Gentry Williams back in the defensive backfield. We saw that on the game's most important play a week ago.
Yeah, it's going to be important to have your starters available. Now, Oklahoma State may not provide the same challenge as a passing offense that Kansas does, but given the fact that they're going to run the ball so well, you need to have all your cards available to you, because when they run the ball as well as they do, they can hit play action. You're going to have guys that are going to be able to trust what they're seeing and be able to make plays in the passing game. Alan Bowman will give you opportunities to make plays. You need to just go out there and take them. So that's going to be a big factor for this one. And then it's Danny Stutzman. I mean, Danny Stutzman is the key to this Oklahoma Sooners defense from a leadership standpoint, from a signals, keys, communication standpoint. He is huge. And you can't tell me that his loss didn't make a big impact in the way that game finished as well. Because you have him out there, I feel a lot more confident about what Oklahoma is going to be able to do defensively in that fourth quarter. But you don't, you lose. Your competitive depth wasn't up to the challenge. And here we are, still kind of frustrated about this loss to Kansas, because I don't think you'll ever not be frustrated about a loss to Kansas. But hopefully they can get him back, because he is, again, a key component. And going up against, I'm going to say it, the best running back in the Big 12 and maybe the best running back in America in Ollie Gordon, you're going to have his physicality, his smarts, his tenacity leading the charge for the Sooners.
No doubt. And, this is, okay, how much can you put into this? All of the football acumen that you touched on, John, that Danny Stutzman brings, the getting everybody in the right position, on and on, right? There's a million different things on the football field that's quantifiable, that's like measurable to a degree, right? This one, maybe not as measurable, but just the emotional morale standpoint that I think Danny Stutzman, having him or not having him out there, has for Oklahoma. They got to have him back. And again, then you look across the ledger, and I agree with you. Ollie Gordon right now, I mean, John, he's making a case not best Big 12 back. He's making a case best back nationally right now. 141 carries, already over 1,000 rushing yards on the season. He's almost at 1,100 rushing yards. He's going for 7.7 a pop. He's got 10 touchdowns. This is a star of stars right now in college football, and he's red hot. So, yes, you need Danny Stutzman back healthy in this game big time.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of it is beyond just the physical aspects of what Danny Stutzman can do, because he's got so much more experience than a guy like Kobe McKenzie or Jaron Kanek or Kip Lewis. Kobe McKenzie was a 4-star prospect that was highly coveted. And if you don't recall, I mean, when Lincoln Riley left, Brent Venables came on board, Kobe McKenzie decommits from the Oklahoma Sooners and decides to go to Texas. Well, not long after that, he flips his commitment back to Oklahoma. So again, a highly coveted player, someone who's going to be very, very talented and going to provide some big time production for the Oklahoma Sooners at some point. He just doesn't have the experience yet. And experience does matter, especially in games where, okay, you can see teams trying to take advantage of Oklahoma's aggressiveness by using misdirection, by using the read option, the RPO game. They're taking advantage of that. If you don't have as much experience in seeing these things, a lot of times you find yourself guessing as opposed to just trusting your keys. And that's where it's going to be challenging for Oklahoma if they don't have Stutzman on the field. I fully believe that Kobe McKenzie, that Kip Lewis, are capable linebackers and are going to grow into big time roles for the Sooners. We've already seen Kip Lewis and what he's been able to do in short time. The dude is just always in the backfield, it seems. And Kobe McKenzie, again, he's got the size, he's got the physicality to be an impact player. It's just a matter of, okay, we got to develop this guy to be ready to be a starter for this team. He just doesn't have enough snaps under his belt for me to feel 100% confident that he can go out there and do the job. I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong that, okay, Stutzman's not available. These young linebackers that Brent Venables has brought in are going to be fully capable of leading the charge for the Sooners. And I mean, they could prove me wrong. I mean, again, very talented players. And we talk, there's a lot of talk about Jaren Kanak right now in the chat over on YouTube. And yeah, I mean, he's still a work in progress, but he's a very, very athletically gifted dude that can get around the ball. He just has he's got to clean up, and he's going to get better and better and better with all these things that go on as he goes and reviews the film. He's going to continue to get better. And so you're going to have a better player down the road in Jaren Kanak than what you have now. It's frustrating for now, but you got to trust the process and trust the developmental aspect of this game. But for this Saturday, it's going to pose some problems. But also, this is why you bring in a Dejon Terry. This is why you bring in, Jacob Lacey and maybe a Philip Paya, a Davin Sears. You bring in these big dudes in the middle. You develop Isaiah Cohen, Jordan Kelly, and Jonah Laula and the way he's playing inside. Like, this is why you bring these guys in, to bolster up your defensive line, add some beef to make it a little bit more difficult for Ollie Gordon to run. And here we go. This is going to be arguably your best challenge, or your biggest challenge, since maybe the Texas game. The Oklahoma State offensive line is playing really good football. Are you going to be up to the task? That's going to be the question that's answered this week.
Well, and I hope, though, fans are, because as the season goes along, you sort of recalibrate your expectations of a season, right? So coming into this thing, again, it's Oklahoma football, so the expectation is always, let's go win a conference championship, let's go play in the college football playoff, let's win a game and go win a national championship, right? Let's go win 2 in the college football playoff. But since you haven't won 1, let's go win that first one in the college football playoff, right? So that's the expectation. It's Oklahoma football. And yet, again, we've said this before in the past, because of what happened last season for OU, the expectation was, okay, let's make legitimate improvement from the 6-7 we were a year ago, right? Where it looked out of sorts. It looked a mess defensively. There's a number of different things offensively that you could be upset about. Unfortunately, some of those items reared their ugly head in this past couple of weeks, but definitely versus Kansas. But yet before that, coming out of, the first 7 weeks of the season, and in particular out of that Texas game, okay, the recalibration was time to think about winning the Big 12 championship and perhaps visions of grandeur, right? Okay, well, now it's recalibrating, unfortunately, the opposite direction. But for this Oklahoma football team, John, I would hope, because it's OU football, their expectations, their goals, their sights have not changed at all. It's still win the Big 12 championship. It's get into the college football playoff, and it's go win a national championship. And obviously, if those are your goals and it starts one goal to another goal, you got to climb the ladder. You can't lose this game. Your back is against the wall now versus Oklahoma State. So you got to go win this Bedlam game. And for me, we can talk about Gentry Williams. He's back. Danny Stutzman, we hope he's back. Peyton Bowen, okay, what's the injury prognosis there? Obviously, he's one of OU's best defensive players. But, man, to me, it's the defensive line. It's got to start up front. 405 boy, ding, ding, ding. You and I are thinking the same way. Has Oklahoma's defensive line taken steps back after the Texas win? Yes, of course they have. Absolutely they have. And it's got to start with that group versus Oklahoma State. If they're going to right the ship versus the Cowboys, if they're going to right the ship coming down the home stretch and author an 11-1 regular season and play Texas or K-State for a Big 12 championship, those guys have not been good enough. So we can talk about the guys, and are they going to be back with the Williams, Stutzmans, the Bowens of the world? But to me, John, I want to see Oklahoma be mean and be a little nasty up front. They haven't been enough of that these last couple of weeks.
Well, yeah, we'll talk through a few more things of what we're looking forward to this week in Bedlam. What could be the last Bedlam for who knows how long, and give you our early look at Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State after the break. There's no better time than right now to get in on the NFL action. over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. All right, Josh, an early look at Oklahoma State reveals, just statistically speaking, that they're a team that Oklahoma might be able to run on. They give up 170.4 rushing yards per game, 4.5 yards per carry. That ranks 103rd in the nation in rushing yards allowed. As a defense, they're also not great against the pass either. They're allowing 238.9 yards per game, 92nd in college football. Did I say the NFL earlier? Did I say that they were 92nd or 103rd in the NFL? I can't remember. I don't know. My brain's all over the place tonight. But it looks like a defense that Oklahoma might be able to, quote unquote, get right against, as long as there's no inclement weather, as long as the forecast is looking sunshiny and not so windy. I think this is going to be a team that offensively makes a statement, but we'll see. I mean, so much of it's going to come down to how well does Oklahoma's defense stop the run, and how well does Oklahoma's offense respond to what was a bit of a lackluster effort through the passing game, or at least not a lackluster, but maybe an untrusted effort in the passing game.
Yeah, and number one is, okay, you got to take care of the football in this game. Again, that's the Helmer book of cliches, the football cliches, but you cannot give Oklahoma State extra possessions in this game and waste offensive drives. You just can't do it. It's an Oklahoma State offense that right now looks on paper like it's going to be tough to tangle with, John. And so Oklahoma cannot double down on what it did a week ago versus Kansas. They had the one giveaway versus Cincinnati, right? So that wasn't terrible in the turnover department in that game, but obviously versus KU was not very good, though. Of course, one you would put on the special teams unit, but you can't be throwing pick sixes in this game. You can't make the decision to have Jalil Farouk in the backfield and all of a sudden he runs the football and coughs it up. That will electrify Boone Pickens Stadium. And in a game that has all of the tenacity, all of the hate, the vitriol, the venom that this one is going to have being the last Bedlam, and the how dare you guys think that you're better than us to go to the SEC and leave us, and on and on and on. And SEC. You better take care of the football first and foremost in this game. If we're talking about Oklahoma's offense has a chance to do X, Y, Z versus Oklahoma State. Yeah, on paper they do, but this Oklahoma State team at times has been opportunistic defensively. And I think about the K-State game in regards to that. And I think about the Kansas game too, really the two games, right, against the Kansas schools.
Yeah, they're going to play aggressive football, whether it's good or not. That'll be the question, but they'll play aggressively and they'll try to make you make mistakes. They have a good defensive front that's going to be able to get some pressure on Dylan Gabriel. Now, how well does the offensive line respond to that? They allowed Kansas to kind of put some pressure on Gabriel at times when he did drop back to pass. It wasn't always clean. So it's going to be, man, it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a hard-fought game. I think back to, Bedlam 2 years ago when Oklahoma came in and they looked like they were going to be, heading towards the Big 12 title game, potentially a college football playoff berth. And, it was a back and forth game through the first half. And then the second half, Oklahoma's offense just went in the tank because of Oklahoma State's defense. Now, different defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles is gone. Now they're like on their third defensive coordinator in 3 years, but they still have got some talented players over on that roster. They're going to really, they're going to take this game personal, just like, everybody in the stands for that one, because they don't want to be seen as the little brother. They don't want to be seen as not good enough to go to the SEC with Oklahoma and Texas. So I feel like this is going to be a gut check game, because it's easy to beat a team in your barn when you're playing a little bit better offensively and they're not playing very good offensively like they did last year. But when your back is up against the wall and then you got to go on the road into a hostile environment, how you respond early on in this game is going to be a big part of what leads to your success. And if Oklahoma can get off to a fast start, especially offensively, then I think it's going to give them the momentum that they need to carry through that game. But they also got to figure out their third quarter woes too, because in each of the last 2 games, they have struggled, absolutely struggled in the third quarter. And that's not something that we've seen this team do much of this year. They've been pretty good coming out of the break. They've got to figure that out, because that's not going to work in a game like this where you come out after the half and have no answer for what Oklahoma State's going to want to do offensively or defensively. So offensively, they've just got to be better, got to be more consistent. And yeah, I think there's a lot of different things that are going to go into this game, but much like the Texas game, a lot of it's just going to depend on heart and tenacity and desire and intensity. And if Oklahoma can come into this one with the same intensity that they went into the Cotton Bowl with, they'll be all right, I think.
Sure. No, that's right. If that team shows up, they're going to have a great chance to win the game and potentially win the game by a couple of scores, regardless of the environment itself and how intimidating that part of it's going to be. And an Oklahoma State team that, again, continue to give credit to, because, Mike Gundy said earlier this year that this looked like maybe it was going to wind up being one of his worst teams after the South Alabama game. And all of a sudden, he and that staff somehow, some way, is pushing the right buttons and getting Ollie Gordon to do things that are as good as anybody nationally. So they're playing really good football and have beaten, obviously, a couple of good teams in KU and K-State. So it's going to be a challenge. But if Oklahoma plays up to its capability, and in particular, John, if they get off to a good start to take the crowd out of it a little bit, to electrify Boone Pickens Stadium, but also to just prove to themselves a little bit that, hey, we are in fact still a good football team. Come out with that physicality, get off to a good start is going to be paramount in this football game. Try and take that crowd out of it. And again, give yourself a little bit of belief that this is not going to be another roller coaster going off the tracks like at times the KU game obviously started out being.
Yeah, man. Do you want to take a few questions before we get out of here tonight?
Sure.
It's going to be a bit of an abbreviated live show just because we're working a little bit late tonight. I don't want to keep you all late as well. Miss Noel, she asks, why do we not see more of Brennan Thompson? Levy needs to get more creative on his scheme and personnel, get Petaway involved as well. Also, run the ball. Totally agree. If Tawi Walker's available, run the ball. But yeah, we'd love to see Brennan Thompson and Jaquez Petaway involved in this thing because nobody has the speed that they've got.
Yeah, and barring injury, the Gavin Freeman experiment should be over in terms of getting significant snaps over both of those two names, Brennan Thompson and Jaquez Petaway. I don't want to hear about youth. I want to hear about somebody that can go make somebody miss and go make a big time play.
And as much as we love Drake Stoops, I want to see him ceding some of these snaps as well to a guy like Brennan Thompson, who's proven that in limited time, he can make some plays for you. He's made 2 big time catches when he's gotten on the field. So let's give him a few opportunities. And you know what? Give him some opportunities in Jalil's spot, in Nick Anderson's spot. Just give him some, get the speed on the field. Speed kills. You can't stop it. You can only hope to contain it. Another one. This one is going to be on Tawi Walker. Saw from George Stoya of Sooner Scoop at On 3 that, according to Brent Venables, that, hey, fingers crossed on Tawi Walker, just like it is with Danny Stutzman. So I would put him in the questionable category right now as far as injury reports go, but we know how critical he's going to be to this Oklahoma Sooners offense when they go into Stillwater.
So we know ankle, right, for Tawi. What's the update for Stutzman?
Same. It was fingers crossed. So, I don't know exactly what, but yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'm going to lean positively that probably we'll see both. Now, in what capacity? That's a reasonable question to ask. It's right now, if you tell me that Tawi Walker's not in the mix for OU, boy, that's really not good for Oklahoma. I mean, then you've got a run game that's not been altogether great, and you're relying on a bunch of other running backs that flat out aren't anywhere close to the type of production that Tawi Walker has consistently given you this season. So that would not be good, but I do feel like probably both are going to play, and let's hope they're healthy.
Yeah, and hopefully it's just a little bit of gamesmanship, and not revealing too much. of your hand that you're going to have available to you. Eileen Kelly asks a really good question. Where is the physical team that beat Texas? I have no idea. I really don't. I find myself frustrated at the patty cake that happens out there sometimes, where guys are just looking to go strip the football away as opposed to make the tackle. And it's occurred on too many occasions. And I just don't know if it's because they've been out of position and they're just not sure of where they're at, or they don't want to miss the tackle, or they're just trying to make a play. But yeah, this team has not looked the same since coming back from Dallas.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to answer outside of they lost a little bit of a chip, it looks like, or they played above their weight against Texas. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. It's not like Oklahoma's defensive line had been great going into the Texas game. They hadn't been. They had done some good things, particularly against the run, right? Had been good going into the Texas game. They'd stopped the run well, but it's not like they were getting a bunch of sacks left and right. And then they did versus Texas, and that raised the bar a little bit, and they haven't matched it since.
It's been wild to see just kind of the physicality and intensity drop off since that one. Sean asks, was Coach Murray on board with wide receiver taking his running back reps, especially when Farouk doesn't practice with the running backs? Maybe he was during the week in preparation for this one. We know that Caleb Hicks was getting a lot of work during the bye week. All we can say, and all I can really say, is they just didn't feel comfortable with Hicks or Smothers. And which is wild to me when you don't really have much consistency right now with Javonte Barnes or with Gavin Sawchuk, that your other answer to this is Jaleel Farouk taking running back snaps, and then you leave two running backs at home for that Kansas trip. It was an odd plan, similar to the plan they had against Texas in 2022, just odd.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of that, because obviously right now, as far as I'm concerned, you've got one good running back, and that's Tobby Walker, and everybody else is mediocre to maybe below that. Now, whether that's in part because of health, I think it is, but right now that's where Oklahoma's at. They've got really one good running back. And so again, not to just be, hey, let's defend Jeff Lebby and let's defend Brent Venables and DeMarco and everybody, but a lot of times, believe it or not, coaching staffs, even though we yell and scream and stamp our feet, a lot of times probably they do know to some regard what they've got in terms of position groups. So I would like to say that Caleb Hicks and Smothers, like, to me, at this point, my initial reaction, I'll be honest with you, is they've made some sort of tactical error here to have not tried it more, right? Because you're not getting good production outside of Tawee Walker anyways. So why have these guys not gotten a look? And then the other side would be, generally speaking, I think, John, typically coaches don't say, well, we might have two good options, but let's leave them at home, right? So there's got to be something that the coaching staff is not seeing from those guys either, whether it's youth or blitz pickups or whatever. But I, like many, am looking around and saying the same thing that you are, which is, why has it not been tried?
It's a fantastic question, and only the coaches have the answer to that one. A few more questions here before we get out of here. Why won't they leave Caden Green in at left guard? I mean, I can't say that I've sat here and watched the all 22 to see how well he's performing in this one, but we know that they're trying to rotate guys. They're also throwing Jacob Sexton in quite a bit at left tackle in place of Walter Rouse. They're rotating a lot of their offensive linemen. I'm not going to sit here and say that, the offensive line was much of a problem. I thought they were pretty good on Saturday. Now, were there some pressure moments where, McCade Matire takes a holding penalty on a twist that he didn't pick up? Well, yeah, that was a problem. But all in all, I thought the offensive line played really good. So I don't have much of an issue with the way that they're handling the offensive line right now.
I think this is pretty good. Daniel Brooks says, former player here, the offense to me is reminiscent of our 2014 team. And not necessarily the comparison there, but this next piece of it. There's tons of weapons with no identity. It's hard to elevate your play when the coaches have not established an identity. So to that, I say this: what is Oklahoma's identity offensively? Let's just talk offensive side of the football. What in your mind, if you had to describe it, what would it be?
coming into the game, I would have said they were a pass-first team riding Dillon Gabriel. And Dillon Gabriel was the identity of this offense. And then the Kansas game happened, and now I have no idea. Because I would have let Dillon Gabriel throw the ball more than 19 times, weather be damned, pardon my language. But I would have let him have the opportunity to go get that first down, go win me a football game. I would have trusted him more to make the right decisions, to tuck and run, to find some opportunities in the short to intermediate passing game. I would have trusted him to do that more than trust some talented running backs, but guys that just haven't played much this year, and you're asking them to go win you the football game. It just doesn't vibe as well with me. And so I have no idea. And I do think that is an issue. We talk about just the herky-jerky nature of the offensive play calling, where, against SMU, they seemed determined to get the running game going. It wasn't working. So finally they're like, oh, well, I guess we got to give the ball to Dillon Gabriel and let him go win us the game. And all season long, it's just been like, there's nothing built off of one another. We're not running the ball, and then trying to set up play action. We're not, we'll run, and then jet sweep. Like, if you're going to run 5 times in a row, don't run a jet sweep on the next play. That's the time where you run play action. Like, your offense is supposed to be built to where things build off of one another. And when you're running all these things, then you should have stuff that uses misdirection to play off of that. But it just doesn't seem like that happens very much. It's just all very, very basic. And I've come to this conclusion that the offense is just very safe. It's an offense that's designed not to hurt you. No risk, no reward. If you don't take chances, you're not gonna put up points at times. And there were times in this game against Kansas where you needed to take a chance, as opposed to just going 3 downs and punting.
Yeah, I think if you drop back and throw 3 times in that final sequence, probably we're talking about Oklahoma won the game. And yet obviously that didn't happen. And hindsight being 2020, okay. And also that's a hypothetical. So what if Dillon Gabriel gets sacked and the football winds up on the ground? I mean, there's a million different things, right? You throw an interception, they run. I got it. But I think probably he was throwing for a first down if you tried 3 downs to do that. Oklahoma didn't do that. And across the board throughout the game, Oklahoma took the football out of Gabriel's hands, which with those weapons, again, the personnel decisions, we talked about that a little bit. I mean, I think it's time to, if this game didn't rattle Oklahoma's cage a little bit, it needs to. Yes, you need more Jaden Gibson out there. Need more Petaway. Need more Brennan Thompson. Why was Brennan okay to come in on the game's final series when it was desperation mode, but he didn't play any the rest of the game? So explain that to me. I don't like that part of the game. So there's a lot of things that Jeff Lebby and Oklahoma offensively need to answer for. And then defensively, John, look, they gave you back-to-back stops, right, late. That probably should have won you the game, but there was a lot of bad on the defensive side of the football too. And I understand they're dinged up and they've got injuries and things, but it's time to get the nasty back defensively too. Again, mostly up front. That group just needs to play so much better. And if they don't, then unfortunately this season is going to be like, well, the entirety of last year, but definitely the end of last year, where it was a disappointing close to the season for Oklahoma. So a lot of, unfortunately, if things go bad here, a lot of what we're going to think and feel about this staff and where this direction of this program is going, it's going to get determined by what happens this week in Bedlam, right? I mean, this is going to be a lasting feeler type game for Oklahoma. So it's time to get it corrected, and it's time to get it corrected right now.
Especially when you don't know the next time you're going to play Oklahoma State. You can't let this loss linger into perpetuity. That would suck. But Oklahoma State may never schedule you again if they beat you. They'll just hold that one over your head and be like, we got the last one. We don't need to play you ever again. Just one more question before we get out of here. And this comes from Dal Poas 83. He says, if we lose another game, is it Jackson Arnold time?
I don't think so. No, I just, you're so far along in this season now that for better or for worse, it's going to be Dillon Gabriel's show, I think, at this point. And I just can't imagine the staff not honoring that. Maybe in the bowl game, he gets extended run, or Gabriel does the courtesy of opting out, right? Almost as a little bit of a favor to Oklahoma if you're not playing for anything particularly substantial. But I mean, what do you think? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I think even if you lose this game or one more game, you'll still have potentially the Big 12 title game to play for, because, I mean, who knows how the rest of the season's going to, like, the next month of Big 12 play is going to be wild. I mean, you've got 5 teams with 1 loss in Big 12 play. You got 2 more teams that are 1 game back. So right now you got 7 teams that are still in the Big 12 title hunt. And so anything could happen. Even if you have 2 losses, you could still make the Big 12 title game, just like we saw last year. I believe, I can't remember if Kansas State had 2 conference losses. I know they were 9-3 going into the game, but I mean, you're going to have a chance still at the end to find your way into the Big 12 title game, depending on how everything transpires, tiebreakers. That being said, I would like to see him get some run. I would like to see him get some playing time, because it's going to be so important to get him that experience, to get him ready, because the SEC is going to be a gauntlet. It's not going to be easy. And I mean, this schedule has not been easy either. The Big 12 is tough. It's a tough conference that's got some talented programs, maybe not as talented as what they'll see in the SEC, but I mean, those games against Ole Miss and Alabama and Tennessee, those will be tough. Texas, obviously. Missouri is showing that they're a program on the rise. Dang it. And this is a team that's going to have a challenge next year. And so get as many snaps as you possibly can for Jackson Arnold, and not just to hand the ball off or run the quarterback run game, but to actually be a part of the offense and run the offense. If you're going to play him, if you're not going to play, like if you're not going to let him be a part of running the offense, then to me, just don't play him. Just let him sit, let him continue to watch and learn. And then, like Josh said, in the bowl game, give him an opportunity to have several drives, if not a half or a quarter or whatever you want to give him, but let him actually get some significant time running the offense.
By the way, K-State did have 2 conference losses a year ago. They lost in the regular season to TCU, and then they lost to Texas as well. Got into the Big 12 championship and obviously won it. Now, let's hope we're not talking about Oklahoma as a 2-loss Big 12 title game entrant, though. Probably most people would say, okay, that's not the worst thing coming off the sour taste from last week if you got to play in the Big 12 championship game with 2 losses. But, you know, let's not take that route, right? And, oh, by the way, KC fan, hey, I hear you. Too many dumb mistakes on Saturday, kind of like our Chiefs on Sunday. A horrible football weekend. Thank you very much, Denver. You finally did it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the rare occurrence that Dallas actually has a good weekend on the same weekend that Oklahoma does. So I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
Down was up, left was right, everything out of circuit.
The Big 12 is backwards this year. And then just one final comment. And I think this would be a good maybe topic for our next show, Josh. And that's just to talk about expectations and predictions and how things change as the season evolves. And Twisted Monkey says 10-2 is my prediction, so nothing to really be upset about yet. Mark said, I predicted 9-3. I'll be happy with that. Still a huge improvement. And I think that's a good place to leave. Somebody else earlier on said patience, and this is Fred Bagley, says patience is the word for this team right now. And I'm with you. There's a lot that's improved. There's a lot that's going to continue to improve. And so, you know, to steal the 76ers phrase, trust the process, I'm going to continue to trust the process. But I think it'll be good to just dissect and dig into what are the expectations for this team. But go ahead, Josh.
And I love that. And you guys are much more measured than me, because my word would be impatience. I want to see improvements, and I want to see them right stinking now versus Oklahoma State.
And we'll expand upon that on our next show here on Locked On Sooners. So make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Again, also available on YouTube, free and available on every platform that you could choose. Download Locked On Sooners wherever you get your podcasts. Go leave us a 5-star review as well. If you like what we do, please go leave us a review. Go leave us a 5-star rating. It helps other people find out about the show. It helps us. Often people are asking, how do we help support the show? That's how you help to support the show. So thanks so much for being here again for a late night Locked On Sooners. We appreciate your time and your presence. And we always appreciate what's going on in the chat. You guys have a great conversation there, and it's always fun to watch what you guys are talking about and just the respectable way that y'all talk about it. So thank you for being the best fans on the planet and the best supporters on the planet as well. But follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. Again, we'll talk so much more about Bedlam later on this week, and we'll get into what the expectations for this team should be, and are they evolving, changing as well. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.